So welcome everyone. Welcome to producing, I was going to call it producing your own fashion labels. No, that's another course I do. Welcome to communicating with your production factory, The Facts, with my very good colleague, Lunia Oliver. My name is Jennifer Williams-Baffoe. For those of you that don't know me, I run a consultancy called Wilberforce and a learning arm called Wilberforce Academy, which is probably where you might have seen this if you've come from Instagram or any of my courses. I teach at London College of Fashion and Central St. Martin's, Royal College of Art, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And in between all of that, I do sleep. It might not seem like I do, but I do. But without further ado, let me introduce you to my colleague and then we can explain why we've got into this. So welcome, Lunia Oliver. I know you've put Lucy there. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. And hello to everyone that's joined us for this session this evening. It's always a pleasure working with you and presenting to your delegates and designers that you're working with. Always a pleasure.
I really appreciate your time as well. I really do. And just for those of you that don't know, Lunia is donating the fee for this to a charity. Is it a homeless charity?
It's for homeless people, yes.
See,
yes.
Really lovely. Yeah, this is, even though it's free for you, you know, it's not for me. I got paid for Lunia's time. So I just wanted you to know that as well. So I think the way that we're going to start this, everyone, is a bit like an interview. So I'll interview Lunia and Lunia will give us insights. And then, of course, if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat. And we do have a moderator on hand, which is LeBron. So he'll be helping us. So if you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat or the usual, put your hand up. All right. So Lunia, we met, didn't we? How many years ago? Oh my gosh, like over 20.
I think I stopped counting after 5. Let's leave it.
It's longer than that.
Let's leave it that. No, it's a lot longer than that.
We were trying everybody to work out how we met, and basically, so we both come from. Why don't we start with London College of Fashion? So we both went to London College of Fashion, and we've sort of more or less remember each other from there. And then we went off to work in the world of fashion industry. And then somehow we got connected. And I think the connection was a factory that I had been introduced to for some work that I was doing. And then Lunia, what were you doing with?
I was working with that particular factory with a designer at the time. And I think our paths coincided. I honestly don't remember the exact, the exact circumstances, and but it was. I did recognise you. It was one of those things, and then we ended up not long after, and after some discussion, we ended up working together on various projects based in London, and that was to do with supporting designers in London. And I was working in the capacity of supporting with production management and quality control.
Yes,
so that was my remit. And then at the same time, we were also working both at the same time at London College of Fashion. So so there was a few little crossovers going on at the same time.
Exactly, a lot, quite a few. So yeah, that was like London Apparel, the So East programme, British Fashion Council at some point, and of course London College of Fashion. So quite a lot of cross paths. I guess one of the key things I want to ask you, Lunia, is what exactly does a production manager do in fashion?
Okay, let's start from the beginning, because designers, when they start in this industry, have a reasonably good idea of what a designer does. They come up with the concept. Most designers know what it is that they want to do or what it is that they want to create. And then they go about creating it and making it into a 3D. And yes, there is a process with that. There's the actual development, the design development of that. There's a process. But after arriving at your design and arriving at a collection, The designer would, I guess the objective is to sell it, to find buyers, to find someone who wants to wear your clothes. So at that point, once a designer has sold their collection or garments, you want to start producing it, perhaps en masse. Sometimes it's not mass production. Sometimes it might just be one-off pieces, but replications of, couture is like that. You're not going to go into mass production with couture. That's why they're couture. But at that point, there's a handover, and you want someone to manage the process that's required to produce the garments in a larger volume. And it's not dissimilar to some aspects of the design process, but there's a lot of other problem solving to be had, and there's a lot to be done in terms of volume and quality control, but we'll discuss that shortly. So that's really what a production manager does. They make sure that your garments are produced to spec, on time, and to price, to cost. Those three aspects.
Brilliant. So then let's think about this scenario. I'm starting up my business. Maybe let me give you two scenarios. I'm starting up my fashion business, new, very wet behind the ears. I'm kind of, the passion is there, as they say. Don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to factories, but I know I need help. Why would I employ you?
You would employ me because what you've just said, in your own words, you don't know anything about factories. So my question to you is, do you know any factories? So if your question to me at that point is no, well then right there, I can tell you, you need a production manager, perhaps for those introductions. Okay. You need a production manager for introduction. You might need a production manager to source various items, to get a competitive price, to get something. And sourcing isn't necessarily always about best price. It's about best timing. You might have access to a particular velvet from one source within 2 weeks, and the other one's 3 months. So you have to work to a schedule. Schedule's very important. So that's why you need a production manager to ensure that you're on schedule, to spec, and can do those introductions and manage the relationships. Okay. I think a lot in this industry is about relationships. Yeah. Which is why we work together. Yeah. And we've known each other for years, decades. When in doubt, always be nice and always be decent. And when in doubt, ask. You're in the business of problem solving. You don't have to know everything all the time. Ask, but ask the relevant people. And that's why a production manager with some experience is a good idea. Yeah. Excellent. All right. So we've had a couple of new people join the room. So welcome to you. If you have got any questions, please pop them in the chat. We do have a moderator, LeBron. Very happy to pulling those questions out for us. So if you've got any questions, do ask. And then, of course, we're going to have a time a little later for questions as well. All right, fantastic. So that was the first scenario, Lunia. Second scenario, let's say I'm established. Maybe I've been going quite a few seasons, and I'm taking quite a few orders. So I've got volume now. Let's say I've got production run of about, I don't know, a couple of thousand, a little bit more than that. Again, same question. Why would I employ you, and how does it differ from when I'm first starting out? Okay, so you've just said something interesting to me. Okay, I'm going to write it down because there's nothing better than a visual. You said this, 1,000. 1,000.
Yeah.
That's your volume. Okay. It's a very important question because that's the first question that a factory owner asks me. How many? That's all they're interested in. How many? And so if I say to them 1,000, they're going to think one of two things. They're either going to think, great, we've got 1,000 garments, or they're going to think, oh God, please go. And here's the difference. 1,000 garments, when you've got this, and I hope anyone, you can read this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very different to 1,000 of these when you've got this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's two things going on here. Volume can either mean depth of production of one style, or lots of different garments, but you want one of each. And I can tell you now that that second scenario is the problem for a factory, because that to them isn't production. That to them is multi-sampling.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. They don't want that.
And multi-sampling, put it this way, factories never make money, and that's why they're in it. We all need to put food on the table and mouths to feed and roof over it. This is why we want to generate an income for ourselves. So when they see lots and lots of different styles, and you say, yeah, I want one of these, two of those, just one of those, that's not going to float their boat. They're not going to be happy. But if you say, oh, I've got one style, I've got 1,000 pieces that I want you to make, and across 3 sizes, that's their dream. That is their dream. So, yeah, that's it. I can't even remember what your question was, actually.
It was if I've got volume. The question was,
if you've got volume
and I'm starting to grow and expand, you know, why would I hire you? And again, what's the difference?
Okay.
You've explained the difference. So
I've explained the difference. So what I would say to a new designer, if I were to give them advice, I would say there's a lot to be said for that saying, and I don't know if you've all heard this saying, less is more. So when you come up with all your ideas, edit it. You don't have to do 500 different t-shirts. You might only have to do 250 different t-shirts, and that's enough. So be careful what you really, more is not more, less is more when it comes to production. So that's really the crux of the matter when you're talking about volume. A factory owner wants to see that you've got X amount of styles, but also X amount of volume per style. That's it, really.
Okay. All right. So that said, I think something that a lot of my students and clients that I work with get confused with is understanding the different types of production. And what I'm alluding to is, I guess what I wanted to know is, what's the difference between a factory, seamstress, CMT? What do they all mean?
Okay, yeah, there's 2 different ways of. Okay, let's start with CMT, because that's the classic way that you know, designers, particularly in Britain and Europe, or those that are just starting out for themselves, normally take the CMT route. And CMT, shall I write it down so that people
that
can
would be
see?
amazing. So then everyone can see what it means.
And then you can see.
I know what it means. You know what it means.
You know what that means. Okay, let's do that. CMT, let's write this down. CMT.
Yeah, classic
Stands for
terminology.
cut, make, and trim. Cut, make, and trim is literally that. So all it means is that that particular factory, when you go to them, what they do is they cut your garments, they literally make your garments, and then they trim it. So with buttons, with the this, with it, that's really what they do. And why that's important to a designer is that they only, this factory, a CMT factory will only cut, make and trim what you give them. So at that point, that should tell you that you provide all the raw materials, like the fabrics, linings, interlinings, all the trims you provide, all the instructions, the patterns. And when I mention patterns, I mean the graded set. So for anyone here that doesn't know what a graded set is, it means that, for example, your collection might consist of sizes between size 8 to size 16. So you have to provide the full graded patterns, and it's a set of patterns between size 8 and size 16. They don't get involved with any of that. You provide it, because that's what they are. They're cut, make and trim what you provide. So that's important for you to remember, because it means the onus is on you to be production ready. You have to be ready with the patterns. You then have to be ready with the fabric and the trims and all the instructions, which would be mainly the tech pack or the spec sheet. So there's quite a lot of work up front, which you have to do as the designer owner to be production ready. And that's really why you might need a production manager, so that they get you to be production ready. Because if you don't know what a graded set is, your production manager will know, etc., etc. So that's CMT factory. The other factory is just straightforward manufacturing, and that's more like placing an order. So what you'd find is there are factories, particularly the large ones in, I'm going to say offshore to Britain, that is. Turkey, you can get manufacturing in Portugal and Spain as well. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, you can get manufacturing in North England. But they tend to be the large volume factories. Yeah, I'm going to say Turkey, I might say Ukraine, I'm going to say Bangladesh, India, and China, of course, among other countries. And they tend to be kind of specialist or focused on certain areas. So you'll get t-shirt manufacturers. You'll get manufacturers that specialize in, say, socks, ties, that sort of. So and literally you'd go to them and say, I want to produce a pair of socks that look like this in so and so color, these are the sizes, can you produce it? And they're going to say, yes, we can. And all they'll do is perhaps send you a sample of something that you might want, you say yes or no, and then they produce it. And you don't have to get involved with purchasing any fabrics, any raw materials, or they literally manage that aspect. So a manufacturer typically is like purchasing an order, which for many designers starting out, that can seem quite attractive. So I can understand why that would be attractive to a new designer. There are pros and cons. Manufacturing tends to be characterized by larger volume. So that might be a barrier to designers that are starting out. CMT factories are tend to be geared towards smaller designer businesses, and also will cater to designers that are starting out. So it's pros and cons. Okay. But either way, you will need a production manager.
Yeah, you will. Okay, so really, really interesting. Tell me it's like I'm just talking to you. Tell us a little bit more. Tell us a little bit more about manufacturers. So I know that because you've got experience working, as we call it, offshore, as well as onshore, which is what we also call home turf. So tell us a bit more about manufacturers offshore. You know, if I were to go to, I don't know, Romania or even China, what could I expect?
With Romania, I would still say that Romania is, and I'm not going to say exclusively with this, but to me, Romania would still be CMT. Okay. With China, this is the way I would work with China, or the large volume, or Turkey. And I would ask them, not necessarily at the very beginning stage, I wouldn't necessarily ask them up front for finished garments. I would ask them for samples of clothing that, that, just to determine whether the quality that they've got of the raw materials is what I want. So if I'm seeking, say, t-shirts, I want to know what that weight of cotton is. I want to actually feel it. And if they're able at that stage to send me something, a standard garment, just for me to have a look, great. And then you take it from there. You'd want to see their color, the way they dye, because if color is important to you, which for many designers it will be. So, for example, I worked with a designer that produced mainly CMT garments in London. And then she had some knitwear done with a manufacturer in China. Okay. And it was all reasonably smallish volume. So going to China with smallish volume wasn't a great idea. And guess who ended up being on the phones? It was me. I'll tell you how I negotiated that in a minute. And but the point here is, she wanted the knitwear to be color matched to the garments that she was making in London. So at that point, the onus was on me to communicate the color. Okay, now obviously I did send them samples of swatches of the fabric, but really to get really precise color, then you send them a reference for the Pantone. You know, there is such a thing as the Pantone color reference. Now that will be the onus, again, down to you, your production person, or you, the designer, to get the correct information to the correct factory, you know, or to the person that you're working with. So really, that's really how I would work. I'd want to see something in my hand. They'd have to send me something.
Okay, so a bit technical here. Is that a lab dip?
It's a lab dip, yes. I remember being witness to a situation that went it went horribly wrong, and I'm really pleased to say I wasn't the production manager at the time. It was my first job, actually, and I was an assistant in the quality control department. It was a bridal company, a very, very large established bridal company at the time. And they, alongside the bridal ranges, they had ranges like for the mother of the bride and also bridesmaids. Now, the mother of the bride collection was, I mean, it's quite extensive. And they had certain garments, very nice, really nice quality, made in China. And then they had the dresses were made in India with beadwork and sequins, all handmade. And the overgarment was made in China. And the production came in. And the production came in.
I'm laughing because I kind of can preempt what happened.
All I can say is that the garments from India, and they were beautiful on their own, lovely, nothing wrong with them, nothing. Okay. I would have described the color as more of a salmon pink. Yeah, that's the color I saw. Now, the rails of garments that came in from China to match, to be sold at the same time as a set, I would describe that as a baby pink. So automatically, those suits were not suits. Okay, that was not an outfit. Okay. So like I said, I'm very glad I was not the presenter, but I saw it coming in, and you can see everyone sweating because this is a lot of money, which actually brings me to the next point. A lot of money, a lot of investment is tied up with large volume. Everyone knows that. So it's really important to be prepared, because an error when you're just doing design and sampling is most designers can probably take a hit. But an error in production when you've got volume, that starts to be scary, and it can put vulnerable designer businesses out of business. So that's another reason why having a good production management might be necessary for you, for a new designer.
So one of the things that I do want to pick up on is because you spoke about sampling, and I really do want us to sort of concentrate on that as well and highlight that. Sampling, especially if we kind of think about, I'll give us a scenario. When we were working at London Apparel, for example, we had all those designers who had aspirations of selling and were trying to get into boutiques, but were just people just sampling. Can you shed a little bit more light on exactly what just sampling is and why designers might just do that?
And why
designers more or less do that? Yeah.
Okay. Well, sampling is necessary because it's necessary for several reasons. Sampling is where you're working out. Okay, let me backtrack. A designer that comes up with their concept normally draws out their concept. You've got your ideas, they're on a two-dimensional sheet of paper or on a screen, and it's a two-dimensional design. And at some point, you've got to take that two-dimensional design, your idea concept, and make it into a 3D. And the most designers that are at least trained in college trained will make the initial 3D workings out in-house to save costs, and the initial ideas you'll make it in-house, and that would make sense to do that. And then taking it from sampling in-house, it's then necessary to sample with a factory. Like I said, for several reasons. One of the reasons is you need to test them out, that they can make to your standard. And the idea is that they make to a better standard. They can usually improve on what you can do at home. They're the ones with specialist equipment and the finishing and the expertise. So actually, you want them to bring in what they can in a polished, professional, finished way. So it's necessary to do that. And But one of the big reasons also is to arrive at a price point. You have to have a price point, a production price point from a factory, which they can quote you once they've made a sample. If they don't make a sample for you, they can't give you a quote. Simple as that. They have to make something and then they give you a quote. And this is true the world over. This isn't just a London thing or a Britain thing or a Europe thing. This is everywhere you go. They have to make a sample to arrive at a price. And the reason here is that they price your garment on how long it takes them to make. So if it takes them 1 hour, then it's going to be based on 1 hour. If it's 1 day, that etc. etc. And then the other reason why it's necessary to have a sample is that a good factory will not go into production unless they've done a sample for you, because to them it would be a risk, and they're not in the business to take on your risk. They also want to know that they can make your garments to spec, and then arrive at a price point, and then you shake your hand and put it in writing, and that's really it.
Well, you're absolutely right. One, I want to bring up scenarios of, because we've seen it where you've got the designers that are serial sampling. What does that mean? Why is that an error if they're series of sample?
Oh, if they're serial sample, that automatically tells me that they're not selling. They're not getting customers, then the whole point of having volume is because you already know you've got customers.
Mm.
And if you're just doing sample after sample and development, and even though it's a necessary step, you at some point you want to be in the business of selling.
Mm.
And at that point, you want to see volume. And obviously, that's what a factory is interested in. They want to know how much business you're going to them with.
Because sampling is time consuming, is it not?
It is, and it's like I said, it is a necessary step that you have to do, and the factory has to, and they know they have to do that.
Mm.
But they want to also be assured that there's going to be some production, some kind of volume at the end of it.
Because it's
in fact, sampling is a loss leader for them. They not just not make money on sampling for you. Very often they actually they might actually lose money. Okay. So an attractive designer to a factory is one that comes with volume, and it's this version, 1,000 pieces, one style. Yeah. That's what they want to see. Yeah. It doesn't have to be 1,000. In this country, production, you can get a production price starting from 5 pieces. Okay. So it doesn't have to be 1,000. Mm-hmm. A small or young startup, 5 pieces, 10 pieces. Yes, it's very low volume to a factory, but it's still considered production. Mm-hmm. So don't be turned off with just because we're discussing 1,000. No. It can be 10. It can be literally a handful.
But let's be real, if for example a large order came in, what potential scenarios could happen then?
If a large order comes in, it means that you are then in a position to negotiate a better price. So if you've only sold 10 t-shirts and you want 10 t-shirts made, the fact that same factory that made your sample will say, yeah, okay, we can make you 10, it will cost you £5 each, or whatever it is, for argument's sake. But if you come in with 1,000, then that £5 suddenly becomes £2.50.
You know what? That is great, because you've answered one of my questions that I was going to ask, but I was alluding to, I wasn't clear in my question. What happens if I've got an order which isn't that big, but then a larger order comes in, say from another competitor or another designer? What could potentially happen?
So hang on, repeat.
So I've got an order in. I've got an order in with a production unit.
Yes.
It's not that big, couple of pieces. I wouldn't say a couple. I've got maybe a fair few, maybe about 20 or 30 or something like that. Not a lot.
Yeah.
But then another designer comes in or another brand comes in and it's a fairly large order. What could potentially happen to me?
So the question here is about competition. Are you competing with their time?
Yeah,
in case you're on the back burner.
Absolutely. That's what I'm alluding to. And what do I do?
For sure, you want to avoid that, and you're not in the position to no one's in the position to control other designers or competitors. I tell you the best thing that you can do, and it's about being production ready. So if you say, I've got 10 garments that I want to be made. Okay, it's not a lot. They might have been expecting 20 garments from you, but you've come in with 10. You can say, the best thing that a designer can do at that point is to be on time with absolutely everything. And one thing that I have noticed with quite new designers is very often, they'll have they might have the fabric ready, they might have the linings, and then the zips are they haven't got the zips, they might not have the buttons, they're not actually production ready. And a factory doesn't take to that, because they don't like starting to make anything unless they know everything's there and they can finish it. So at that point, the best thing you can do is say to them, it's only 10, it's less than I thought, but guess what? I've got all my fabrics, I've got all my trims, everything's ready. I can have it with you here tomorrow, 9 a.m. Now, how does that start to say? That starts to say, you mean business, you're at the ready, let's just get these out. Okay. So that's kind of really what you're aiming to do, to be production ready, to say what you to do what you say and say what you mean. And if your figures or production volume is disappointing, say to them, be upfront. It's disappointing this season, but guess what? We're making it up with doing this, that, and the other, and I'm ready with this. How soon can I get this out with you? And then he's going to say, well, if you've got everything ready for me this week, then I'll have it by enders. And that's the kind of conversation you can have with a factory. But I would always say to a designer, don't be hard on yourself. If you're disappointed with the volume that you're selling, it's life. But it's life. But just be prepared with whatever volume you do have. You know, yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got a question from the audience, which is touching back on when we were first talking about the differences between a different type of unit. So Christina has asked, hi Christina. Christina has asked, is a seamstress a term for a small sewing factory who might make samples in different sizes?
Oh, okay. No, a seamstress is the actual individual, the operator behind a sewing machine, a classic sewing machine. So yes, you can find a seamstress or many seamstresses in a factory, but you might also employ a seamstress that works from home as an individual. They're not always easy to find, and very often it's word of mouth. But individuals like that do exist. A seamstress working from home might not have the full array of equipment at her disposal. And a seamstress isn't necessarily a pattern cutter. She's literally just someone who sews. But there are very, how to put this, there are professional people that are capable of pattern cutting and sampling and making all in one. I don't know if there is an actual word for them.
Yes.
There is. What are they called?
Genius.
Genius. There we go. Okay. And if you get an individual like that and they work from home, well then there you go. But the question for me, if I were to work with someone working from home, is always what kind of equipment do they have? Because they might not have the specialist equipment that a larger factory will have. You know, if you're in the business of, let's say, I don't know, evening wear, bridal gowns, and you want a baby lock machine to finish the, a garment maker in a home might not have a baby lock machine. It's a very specialist machine. So it's a pros and cons. But when it comes to sampling and making your garments from two-dimensional design concept and into 3D, then working from someone from home is perfectly good, and very often they are highly skilled. So, yeah.
Okay, we've got a question. Anina's asking. Okay, so Anina's asking, how do you find factories that produce small quantities such as 10 pieces? And also, this is important. I asked Anina, where in the world is she based, or they based?
Yeah.
Anina's based in Switzerland.
Okay. I've never worked with a factory in Switzerland. I can't lie. Okay. There are organizations. The first stop really is to, apart from internet, I mean, can Google most things, but Google won't necessarily give you the kind of recommendation that you're probably after. Word of mouth is always, well, it has its benefits, but apart from that, there are organizations which national organizations. We've got them in Britain, the Make It Here, and the UK Fashion and Textiles Organization, British Fashion Council. So there are resources that that I tap into quite regularly in the UK. With individual countries, I would go to your trading bodies, your trading associations, and often colleges as well might have links and inroads to, or certainly libraries that you might be able to access. So I hope that's a help. I don't know, Jennifer, have you got anything that you
have. I've popped a couple. I put Textile Forum in, which was that's 6 sister companies to the British Fashion Council. And I put in, of course I put it either Let's Make It Here. Now I'm going to do a bit of plugging. The Let's Make It Here is based on the book that I wrote with the British Fashion Council. My book is out of date, obviously, because that was a guide that I did many, many moons ago. But I mean, when I look at it, there are a couple of people that I see in there. So everyone, the Let's Make It Here is a guide which was created by UK Fashion Textiles, which is a sister company to Apparel and Textile Challenge, who's an organisation that I used to work with also as well. Has someone got a question? Someone put their mic on. No? All right. So yeah, basically, is that you, Zippy? Alex, you got a question? No? All right. So basically, yeah, sorry, go on.
No, sorry, no questions.
Okay, all right, I'm just going to mute your mic. So basically, yeah, those are a couple of areas that you could have a look. I'll be honest, they are UK based, and simply because the British Fashion Council, and back then the British Apparel and Textile Confederation, they knew that a lot of our designers were looking for small run production. So it's one of the jobs that I did, and that still happens now. But again, what I would suggest is, as Lunia said, is looking at those trade shows. And again, it's more, what are you looking for? So it really does depend what you're looking for. I think, Anina, you're on one of my courses, so that will come up. It does depend what you're looking for. If you're looking for, I don't know, to produce denim, then, you know, there are specific places that you can go to get that. And again, it all does determine how much volume. That, as Lunia said in the very beginning, it's about volume. It's about how much you're going to make. So this is what, you know, this is why not everyone's successful, because there's this whole process. Lunia, I wanted to ask you about, now that, you know, we find ourselves in difficult times, a pandemic, how much difficult or easy or not easy or whatever, what's your professional opinion on the state of the fashion production industry at the moment?
I'm still looking into this myself. I think this is going to be an ongoing research thing, that it's keeping your eyes open and ears to the ground permanently now. I think the factories that have still got their doors open, and there are factories with their doors still open that are still trading, the ones that have still got their doors open, I would many of them might be not desperate, because that's the wrong word, but really keen to get work. So those that have got their doors open will be keen to hear from designer or anyone. Okay, but those that really can't, haven't managed what, they've closed their doors, maybe shut forever, I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is that the barriers when approaching a factory a couple of years ago no longer exist. And I actually think there are new opportunities now. So, which is probably quite good news to any designer, doesn't matter whether you're a startup or not, is to be bold, pick up the phone and say, I've got this, I'm looking to be doing this, but I'm at this stage, and that's it. You're in a position to hold a conversation like that in a way that may have been a little bit, not tricky, but I think in some ways it's favorable now for a brand new designer. So I'm here to tell any designers now, don't be shy about approaching design factories ever. And now more than ever is, in some respects, not easier, but yeah. I think just be confident.
I agree. Now that, you know, the big players are sort of going to the wayside, like your Debenhams and your Arcadia groups, which I never thought I'd see in my lifetime.
No,
like,
I know.
Karma. But anyway, that's another discussion. But what that does mean is that there are opportunities for startup brands. And not only that, I think the other side of the coin, Lunia, which both of you and I are on, is that there are opportunities for you to expand in other ways. So in my experience, what I've always found, I think I've become much more lucrative and successful on the other side of not being a designer. So being the one that can source, being the one that can help find those facilities, or even, I get really excited when people do my course and they want to set up their own production unit, because that's far more lucrative. It depends if you can get the machinery, what have you. But I think, there are opportunities, and I will say, and I do know that there are a lot of people sort of setting up now at home, now that the pandemic is on, and production, and really small, a little bit like our lovely friends over up there in Perryvale. Was it Barbara and Justina?
Yes. Yeah.
So that type of unit, I've sort of, I've had a couple of people say, look, they want to set up shop on their own because they know that they can sew and they can offer it. And I'm like, wow, okay. So they're like, no, we don't want to design. So it's always interesting when you hear that.
That's interesting. I think that the landscape is going to be changing for the next, and this is everywhere, really, isn't it? Everywhere it's changing. And like, as with everything, it's pros and cons. So all you need to do is position yourself on the pro side. That's it. I think factories will be pleased to hear from designers right now. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think they will. Yeah. I mean, it's, as long, again, as you've said, that there's sufficient enough quantities, it's not just sampling, because that's also the other thing as well. Because
that's right.
So there's a tangible order there, and then they can do business with you as well. Okay.
I think it might be worth mentioning, when it comes to sampling, most factories, they won't refuse doing a sample for anyone, because they know that it's a necessary step that they have to undertake. But for just in case the designers haven't come across this, the price that they charge you for a sample is usually double the production price. And sometimes there have been occasions I've come across 2.5 times, or even up to 3 times. So that's another reason why a factory might not even refuse doing you even multi-sampling, even at this stage, because they're going to think, well, some work or some cash flow is better than nothing. But they will charge you. So any designer that's prepared for that, then that's fine.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Yes. I'm going to ask the question: what kind of garments fill you with dread? Oh, horror. No, actually, I'm being facetious. Okay, what kind of garments can be challenging to produce when you're creating a collection, would you say?
Okay. I think garments that have a lot of, because production management, as we've said before, is it's almost a little, you're managing several things. You're managing money for the budget, because it has to be made to cost. You're managing, a lot of your energy goes to, and planning goes towards managing schedule. You're always on a schedule, always beating the clock, okay? And then, as we said before, managing relationships, okay? And then quality control. Okay, schedule is a big one, actually. That's and it's kind of an unseen problem to someone that's never done this. But for example, okay, I worked for a uniform, that my last full-time role was working for a uniform company. And it was a uniform company that supplied large hotel chains, boutique hotels, large casinos, big casinos, restaurants, the lot. Okay, so we had production, huge volume productions sometimes, or minuscule sampling another time. And for me, the hardest thing there was managing the schedule of huge volume and medium and small at the same time, continually. Your foot is never off the pedal. So in a sense, what I'm trying to say to you, it's not the actual garment. It's not the actual garment or the content of the garment that is a disturbing factor for me. It's actually managing schedule, because you're always, and for example, like my last job with the casinos, if a casino chain is opening, their deadline is not movable. You have to have those garments and uniforms made within 3 weeks. There's no that, because, and this was the thing, we had deadlines of 3 to 4 weeks for supplying a new casino, because they never, the nature of the beast was always that they never knew who they were going to be employing until quite late, at a late stage. So we didn't know how many size 8s, how many size 50s, we didn't know until right up until the 11th hour what we were producing. So I had like, my worst production was making 2,000 garments within 10 days. And it had to be done, delivered, and that was actually to Switzerland, actually. To Switzerland, it had to be delivered by Wednesday, and you can't move the date of the opening. It has to be made. So for me, that was the nightmare, not the actual garment.
Okay. I allude to that because there are some, I'm not going to lie, that fill me with dread. I'm like, oh, and I do want to talk about that. So like, what kind of garments would you say are tricky to produce?
Okay,
we're starting out
different things. I'm going to show you a couple of garments then.
Oh, thank you.
I've got some here.
It's something I prepared.
And you know these garments because I've been showing these the past few. Okay, let me start off. Now I worked for, I'll start off with something that looks really simple. I worked for a company 20 years ago that did designer t-shirts, all different types, and I've only got a couple here to show as examples, and these are the lesser ones. Okay, and they sold in Harrods, they sold in Selfridges, they sold in, I don't know, the boutiques in goodness knows where. Right, this is one of the simple ones. Okay, very simple. We'll start off simple. Okay, it's got a cross on it, and this was called the cross t-shirt, Swarovski crystals. Okay, everything Swarovski, the big ones, the small ones. There's actually 2 colors here, which I might not be coming across. These were made, and these were made without workers, home workers that I had to, like skilled ones in London, that I had to supply these Swarovski's crystals to, and the t-shirts, right. So this is what my job looked like. See this? These were the things that that you see on the back to actually hold the crystal. Okay, so you can imagine a massive bag or box full of these. Okay, and then loads and loads of packets of different colored, they come in little packets like this, little crystals that look like, oh, can't show them, the little crystals. Okay, some of these packets come from Czech Republic, some are Swarovski, some come in 2 dozen, some come in something else. I've got 10 outworkers in London and they need X amount of these, X amount of those, X amount of those, X amount. Who does the counting?
You.
So going back to that question, why do you need a production manager? Okay. So any designer that actually likes designing, this is why you employ a production manager. So you don't have to do counting. And then packaging and labeling and sending it to outworkers, because someone has to do that. And it's not easy. And it's attention to detail and quite frankly, it's not glamorous, and it's not for everyone. So that's why you would employ a production person. So that was the production for something like this. Okay. Next, we had something that looked a bit more like, hang on. Okay. There's embroidery and there's sequins on this, and also it's like a drawing, it's like art on here. Okay, this had to go to three different finishers to arrive at that. And you asked me a question, what makes this difficult? Okay, this is what I see when I see this garment. I see an ivory t-shirt. It goes to 3 makers. And I want it to come back looking ivory, apart from anything else. Otherwise, I've got a cleaning issue. So these are the sort of things that, and I see because I've done this for so many years, 20 and counting, I see those processes quite quickly. I see 3 processes here. That means 3 stops. So that's really what production management is. It's managing the process. And then something like, okay, moving on to this. I don't know if you can see, it's a leather jacket.
I remember this. I love it.
Yeah, I know, it's nice, isn't it? And it's mine. Okay. Right, so it's what I'm trying to get at here is this is a quality control issue. Okay, so obviously it's a lovely jacket. They made it beautifully. The pattern is lovely. It was developed by the designer to a certain spec. But what makes a jacket like this particularly challenging is that before the leather is actually treated, it has to be quality controlled before it's treated. And then it's quality controlled after it's treated. And then it's assembled, cut and assembled, and then you're literally quality controlling at each stage. So it's fine to quality control something at each stage, but what if the first stage is in London, the second stage is in France, and the third stage is in India, and then the final stage is back in London? So suddenly your quality control management is not just international, but you have to decide whether you're doing that quality control on site or if you're going to manage it in a different way. And the production manager will decide which is the most efficient and the most appropriate way of doing that. But all the while worrying about budget, because everything has to be done in budget. So that's really what production management is. And the good news is, the longer you do, it's like with anything, the longer you do anything, the more you can anticipate problems, and the better you get at anything, you know. So it's, again, going back to something I think I said earlier, less is more. If you can keep things simple, keep it simple. Or what I will say, and this probably, when you're doing range planning, and this is why planning a range is really important, do some of your complicated things on one or two of your garments and the rest of them plainer. You don't have to do everything complex on everything, because suddenly you're not just going to need one production manager, you might need three. Absolutely. Design. So there is something to be said for designing for production, to make things easy for yourselves. And that's it, really. Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, I look at that jacket and I love it. I mean, I'm looking over at my one of the bags that Sadiq made me, my quilted rucksack, and like,
I love quilted. Yeah.
But you know, trying to line it all up, you know, and then I saw the paneling in that, and I saw the princess lines in it as well. I was like, wow, trying to get that. You did well.
The thing with a lovely garment is, the thing with quality control is, you only know when something's wrong, if there's something difficult to produce, when something goes wrong, but when something looks really good, to the untrained, to someone without technical background, you won't notice what the difficulties might be. So that's again another reason why you might want a production manager, because even if I see a beautiful garment that looks effortless, and nothing's effortless, but if I see a effortless looking garment, I know what the difficulties are. So I can hone in on that and know exactly what's difficult for a machinist, or what's difficult for the cutting. What's the benefit of that is that at that point I know what to control when I go to a factory, and when I say control, and it's not to be punitive, because I'm never punitive when I go to a factory, I mean assist them to assist. When I go to a factory, my attitude is one of, how can I assist them to ease their job? How can I be of benefit? What do they need from me to make their job easier? There's never a situation where I go into a factory and I'm with a clipboard and marking things right or wrong. This is not good management. Your job is to make their lives, and this might sound a terrible thing to say, and I don't mean it to sound terrible. With a factory, once you've done your development, your designing and development, and you've done your sampling with them, you actually don't want them to think. And I know that sounds terrible. I don't, at the risk of it sounding terrible, you don't want them to think, you want them to do. They're not paid to think, they're now paid to do. You've done the thinking, they've developed it with you, that's it. Thinking is over, development is over, and they just want to get on with it, deliver a great job, do it in the smartest, quickest time at the right price. No surprises, no questions asked, nothing. And that's it. That's a good production. And then you go in, everyone's happy, lovely, go home and sleep at night. And that's it.
We hope.
You know, you hope. In the meantime, yes, if you're problem solving, then I always take it upon myself to take on the problem solving, rightly or wrongly. I'll go in and say, right, any problems, let me know. In fact, I want to know, because I don't want bad production at the end. It has to be that way, because I cast my mind back to those Mother of the Bride outfits. Rails of garments that suddenly couldn't be sold. And someone's head rolled for that. I think a couple of people lost their jobs.
Wow.
It's serious. You have to be serious, you
do.
know, and I wouldn't want someone losing their job because I admit, you know, you have to be responsible. And it's people's lives and their income as well as your own, because we all like to be employed.
So talking on that note as well, so we have a question which is about that.
Okay.
Christina has asked, are production managers paid per job, or are you paid by your time?
I've normally, in the past, I've normally worked full time as a production manager, because it tends to be quite a consuming, well, again, it depends on the volume and many things, but these days I kind of, and I have worked part-time as well. These days I have done consulting and going in problem solve, and you know, I'm quite equipped to be doing that, or I have done that in the past as well. So
So what I've done is, we've got another 15 minutes or so, and I'm opening the floor. I mean, the floor has always been open for questions, so if anyone's got any questions, please do put your hand up or just ask if there's any questions. And even if it's not even to do with production, I mean, I would prefer it to be that, but if you've got any questions about fashion business in general, please do ask. So floor is open. Let's see now. So we'll wait. Everyone's being a bit shy. Is that you, Alex? You've got a question?
Yes, I was about to jump in with a question actually myself.
Go ahead.
I suppose maybe this is just more of a general question really for Lucy, but if somebody was trying to come into the fashion industry from a non-fashion background per se, then what would be the first things that you would recommend for them to focus on in terms of skill acquisition or knowledge acquisition?
I think you've got to because you want to acquire knowledge yourself and skills for yourself, or because I would say that you would need to surround yourself with a kind of a good team, or people that you can access that you can like of a certain pedigree or professional level. You need to get a little network going for yourself that you can tap into or work with. But in terms of acquire for yourself, I would firstly get used to I would acquire a certain language, get used to and I think there is such a thing of a dictionary for terms in fashion, so that you know when you're talking about something, you know specifically what kind of hem you want to refer to, or a scene types, or, you know, so when you're talking with people, they know what you're talking about, and you start to sound professional. So I would get myself a term book, you know, so that you're using a good language. Apart from that, I mean, the best skills that you can have is pattern cutting. It has to be said. If you can pattern cut, you could do anything. But pattern cutting, the next question for you would be, how much time have you got? Because it takes an awful long time to acquire those skills. But pattern cutting would be great.
Definitely. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, Lunia. I popped in the chat there when you were talking about like a fashion dictionary. Everyone in the chat, I've put fashionary.org. Fashionary is a series of books. Mainly they're famous mostly for the templates, but what you will find at the back of those books are the sorry, not just bibliography, but the terminology that Lunia was alluding to.
Terminology.
You'll get that, you know, things like what a tech pack is, or seam allowance, or that sort of thing. So it does do that. A good set of books. They owe me money, actually. Commission the amount of times I promote them. But they're really, really good book, and they do menswear, women's wear, I think children's wear, shoes, and accessories like bags. Pretty good. And there's some
What are they called again?
Fashionary.
Oh, okay.
But like a dictionary, but for fashion.
Fashion. Yeah,
and they do. I think they have got a book specifically just for terminology, but there's loads. The website's there.
I mean, I came across one in Italian, and you can actually get, you can get, so
there was an app like that actually, which taught you how to say Monique Louelier. That's how I can say it, because when you try it, when you look at her,
I'm impressed.
Only because the app taught me how to
I'm impressed, Jennifer.
My French is awful. You know, and then also how to say Versace. It's not Versace, as we say here. Donatella Versace will cut your head off if you say that. So it's better.
Look at you.
Yeah, so, you know, inbreeding. Any other questions? I mean, I've got loads of questions I could ask Lunia, but I feel like these should come from any of you in the room, or even if you've got anything you want to share with us about your practice, or
sampling. Is anyone at sampling stage with anything? Or
I know there are people in the room that are at sampling stage. Please don't be shy. There are, Lunia, they're being shy.
I wasn't clear, Jennifer, on my question. What I meant was, if I was to employ a production manager, do I buy 10 hours of their time, or is it per the job?
Right.
That's what I meant. You know, in other words, if I had €100, you know, like, and I had very little money, like what am I actually spending my money on? That's what I meant. So it's more from what I would spend rather than what the production manager does.
Okay.
But presumably you would have in mind what it is that you want them to achieve. Is that right? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So in other words, if I was to employ somebody, I would be saving time, because I really don't like numbers at all. Okay. And I would paying somebody to do that for me. So would it be like hiring an accountant, that you pay them for 40 hours of their professional time at, say, €60 an hour or something, or like, how is it actually done, that bit? That's all. That's what I meant by the question.
It's a good question, and when it comes to production management, they do tend to be full-time, and it's a very curious thing, because I think a lot of particularly young designer businesses don't necessarily want or can even afford a full-time anything, let alone a full-time production manager. There are agents that have on their books freelance staff, but the thing with agencies, as you know, the only downside, I guess, really is that you're paying agency fees. But like with myself, I I have done jobs where I've done very like I've done like sort of 1 or 2 days per week, for example, for one production run, which is like 6 months. So there is a thing where, so there is a sense where I've completed a job for 1 season. I hope that answers your question. But again, going back to the climate that we're now in, where people are now, employment, if anyone finding themselves in difficult employment situation, then you can probably negotiate whatever you might need from your business point of view. What you need, I'm sure you could probably get. Don't know if that answers your question.
No, thank you. I've drawn the analogy with theatre, in other words, that it's almost like you're seeing it right through, even if you are.
It's because it's a little bit like you're seeing something to achieve an end result. Unless you say to designer, listen, all I need is to be production ready. Can you get me production ready within the next 2 months? And they do that job for you, then that's fine. If you're the one that then oversees the actual production when it's in assembly, and then they're brought in to do the quality control after it, you might be able to negotiate certain jobs down with them, and that is doable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Brilliant. What I did do in the chat, I popped in the chat really quickly, like other places where you can find them. So there are quite a few specific recruitment agencies that you can go to, and they would give you more the full-time, people like Lunia. And then there are other places like Creative Pool, Top Tour, and People Per Hour, of all things, where people advertise their services.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are, but I mean, like you and I, Lunia, we know, fashion personnel and menswear, women's wear, these are recruitment agencies that we know of.
I think there's a lot more flexibility these days than there was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
I really do. I really do think so. And I would say to you, don't be shy to ask for, if it's only 10 hours that you want, or 10 hours that you're budgeted for, then don't be shy in just going for the 10 hours, making that request known. But I would attach a finite job to it, 10 hours to achieve what, and then you'll be fine. Mm-hmm.
That's good advice. I've also popped in there, of course, biggest database of people looking for work, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah.
I mean, even Facebook. I would say though LinkedIn, because it's like the big brother.
LinkedIn, I think,
because you really, you're going to find people on there. So what normally my students, they add me on there, and then if they see what they want, I can signpost. We've got a couple more minutes, so please, don't be shy, even if the question isn't to do with production or it's just to do with fashion in general. Do ask, because this is what Lunia and I are here for. We've got a couple more minutes. And what we don't want is that it's literally like gone 7 and you're like, oh, I should have asked that. What I will do, everyone, so lastly, what I will do is, if you haven't subscribed to my site, I highly recommend that you do. Anina's got a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I do have a question, because you mentioned earlier how important scheduling is. And so in general, I mean, what would we say if, for example, I have designed my collection, I've already did some sampling like in-house, but now I would like to approach factories to get a sampling from them and to then maybe finally produce my collection. So what time frame are we talking about? Like, is there some kind of you know.
Traditionally, there was always quite a reasonably predictable schedule in fashion: spring, summer, autumn, winter, you know, and London Fashion Week, or the fashion sales weeks were always somewhere in September and again in February time. So the seasons were very predictable. These days, with designers selling over the internet, the seasons aren't quite as rigid. So my question to you is actually, how are you selling? Are you selling on the internet, or are you selling through bricks and mortar shop? How are you selling?
Currently not selling at all.
Okay.
I'm really just starting out, yeah.
Okay. Well, then that means that you're flexible in a sense. What I would do if I were you, I would mentally still stick to the schedule that would be considered traditional: spring, summer, autumn, winter. So right now, what season are you working on right now? What are the garments that you're working on right now? Are they spring, summer, or autumn, winter? What are the
autumn, winter.
Autumn, winter. Yeah, autumn, winter. So hang on. So you would want them to be, if you wanted your autumn, winter garments to be on your website, you'd want them to be ready to be on your website as of September, really, wouldn't you? September, October, November, so that they're on your website ready for sale in winter time. So in a sense, your schedule is working backwards. Your production window would happen over summer, the summer months. So that means you would have to be production ready for June or July. That tells me, and where are we? We're February, March, April, May, June. You've got 5 months to get your, I would say, your development and sampling done with a factory. That's what we're looking at. That doesn't. It goes quickly, but that's as generous as it gets, and it's doable. I don't know, without looking at your garments or your sketches, to see how ambitious your garments actually are or complicated, but work on your sketches, work on your ideas. If you can manage to make anything yourself, to get it into a 3D form, and then start identifying the factories that you want to approach early on. In fact, start doing that homework now if you can. If you know what you're trying to produce, start to say, well, which factories do I know that I think I can approach? And if you don't know of any, start doing your research. If you can't find any that you feel you can approach within that time frame, then I wouldn't waste your time designing or making those garments. I mean, it's literally that, which sounds very brutal, but, you know, in a sense, designing and production is all about doing what works. Doing what works has got to be the crux of the matter. But you've got about 4 or 5 months to get your collection ready and made or sampled with a factory. That's not bad. But then to be production ready, you'd then have to have all your raw materials for June, July ready for that production. So the time frame it goes quickly. Time goes very quickly. Scheduling is not easy. Yeah.
Sorry, talking of time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We've just gone over, so I don't know how you are. There's just one more. It was more of a comment rather than a statement. Michael Gassania said that he's in the sampling stage with a small team. He's been actively searching for a factory to bulk produce a couple of pieces. That being said, thank you, Jennifer and Lucy, for the invaluable Zoom. You're very welcome, Michael. I mean, what I will do, everyone, which is why I was saying subscribe to the site. So one of the things that I don't do is I don't share this with everybody. If you've signed up to come to the webinar, sometimes if you're asking privately, you know, just as Anina was there, this will only be shared with those of us that have come to the room. So that's the first thing I'll say. Second thing I'll say also as well is that the resources, so the list of things that I was talking about, only you will get that. So if you subscribe to the site, what I will do is I'll create a section where you can access that document. I'll put all the links that I listed from here in there, and then obviously being a subscriber, then obviously you get access to it. If you want to share it with other people afterwards, I don't mind, but the whole point of me doing that is so that, you know, if you sign up for the webinar, you're getting what you've asked for, basically. And also I'm not going to share your private information with other people outside of here. This is something else. That's it.
Okay.
So Lunia, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really, it's always a pleasure. I can't wait until lockdown finishes, because you're only around the corner. It's so annoying.
I know.
Walking
I think everyone's raring to go.
Yeah, as soon as it's safe to. And just a thank you to everyone for turning up. I really appreciate it. We had more subscribers that came, but it's fine. So, you know, it's you know, entirely their loss.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
And also,
I'll share your details as well on that resource as well.
Please do. If anyone's got any questions, then just, you know, you can drop me a line or via just Jennifer or what have you.
It'll be on the resource, I'll make sure.
Just wish everyone a good luck, good fortune, and be good. And when in doubt, ask. And that's what Jennifer, you're set up, that's why you're here, that's why I'm here. And you know, good luck. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you all. And I hope you've benefited in some ways with the content. Good.
Thank you, Lunia. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome.
A little thanks to LeBron for moderating. You were amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, LeBron.
That's in the background. Bye, everyone. And to my students, I'll see you next week. Bye. See you.
Bye.